Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Iain Whiteley. Iain started reading and writing poetry about 5 years ago as part of his midlife crisis and still has an awful lot to learn. He's getting there though, especially this year with 3 poems appearing in January's The North magazine and a first collection, Ping, published by Write Bloody UK. A copywriter by trade, he's previously been the voice of a lie detector booth in New York City and is currently working for the Bureau of Silly Ideas. Well, first of all, Iain, that must be the best bio ever. Um, but on a more serious note, what I really admire about your work is this careful balance you have of heavy and light. And there's so much energy and humor in your poems, but underneath, I think there's always something true and deep. And I think it's a remarkable feat to have both of those present, without the one overpowering the other. And I would maybe call your poems trickster poems because of their playfulness and their shapeshifting, while all the while they're pointing to something deep and true underneath. Um, there you go. It's been recorded, so you can quote me on that. And I have, of course, a question. And my question to you is, Pablo Neruda wrote in a poem that poetry came in search of me. And I was wondering when and how did poetry came in search of you, and what happened when you first met?
Yes, I don't think mine was very romantic, Miller. I think so. I think it's right. You know, what you say there is that I am a copywriter, and I've been working in quite a lot of creative departments for quite a long time as a writer, but I never did literature after the age of 16 at all. So I didn't really care much for poetry after that at all. And while working in the creative departments, I kind of came home at the end of every day sort of thinking, oh, you've done something creative for a brand, or you've done this, or you've done that. And it never really felt like I was doing anything, I'm not wishing to talk myself out of a job here, anything of use or anything meaningful for me. And I started writing poetry like that. But because I kind of feel like I always want to know and understand what I'm doing, I really felt that I couldn't be a poet without going and signing up to a course. So I immediately went and signed up to a course, but without actually knowing very much about poetry at all. So I turned up at the Faber Academy and they asked me, you know, who are your favorite poets? And I couldn't even answer because I didn't even have any. But that was 5 years ago, and I'm getting there and learning quite a lot now. So it started off by being a need to write, and I mean, yeah, fallen in love with it since then. Can I also just say, Miller, it's so lovely to be here as a featured poet, because I've been here from, you know, the first edition with you and Steph. And when I joined that, I hadn't had any poems published whatsoever. So it's really, really nice to come on and read for you now. And also, I'd just like to say, Steph and Miller read at the publishing, the party for my book. And it was so great to share that time with you. So thank you, both of you.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed the launch of your book. And I'm also really excited to have someone who was here from the beginning be a featured poet. So I'm gonna mute myself and give you the stage for your poem.
Amazing. Okay, thank you. In my book, a lot of it was written before this horrendous year, but quite a bit of it was written while this year was happening. So there are quite a few poems in there that are particular to this year. And I'm going to start with one that is in memory of a very big shop on Oxford Street in central London. So those of you who haven't been to Oxford Street in central London, there was a very big fast fashion shop there that you could never have imagined would ever close. And I was reading quite a lot about empty buildings and the fact that rats were taking over these empty spaces. So I'm going to read, the first of my poems is The Rats of 214 Oxford Street. It was always so tricky in that building, handy for harbourage and every convenience. But it was the noise, Those blasted DJs spinning house from 10 till 10, and later on launch nights. And even then there was no peace. Cleaners, stockists, visual merchandisers fussing till first tube, which was why from Britpop to Brexit, they huddled in cavity walls and ceilings, breeding and feeding and hiding and thieving till everything stopped overnight. Everyone just vanished and they couldn't put their claws on why. Still, the quiet flushed them out to this six-tier explosion of suedette, neon, and impossibly chiseled mannequins, which were first to get weed on. They ratted the hair salon on the lower ground floor, dip-dyed their whiskers, span round in barber chairs, sugared their ratty brows. Across the way, they raticured nails in rose gold and mint, left trails as they skittered the stairs. In menswear, they savaged spray-on jeans, took one leg per tail, got grills for their front incisors. The stupid ones pierced their tongues. Word got round, and as the bins on Oxford Street emptied, neighbours all the way to Regent Street Cinema joined the throngs of ratus fashionistas gnawing cute tubs of frosting, tapioca bubbles, and endless racks of leather. This was the flagship of all rat ships, 90,000 square feet of overconsumption, feasting on the fabric of slave labour and falling apart at the seams. Conditions became unsanitary, the building unsafe, and boss rats scuttled off with their pensions. Yet on they gnawed and writhed and chewed through straps and shoes, fabrics, man bags, crazed and ravenous, unable to stop, unwilling, spilling through doors, windows, floors to Bond Street, South Molton, Mayfair, the sewers below. Thank you. Going to change the pace a little bit now, still staying in London. This is called The Slaves of Solitude, which is the title of a Patrick Hamilton book from the 1940s. I wrote this because although London can be quite salubrious, it's not always what it seems. The Slaves of Solitude. Our theatre is housed between carved up villas on a tree-lined avenue where maids of all work once fussed over middle classes. At interval drinks, two men from the front row finalise a Park Lane sale and shake on a cool 6 million. I think of your sadness, how it hangs in the flat where a picture could be. Neat walls, pristine floors, a closet, those clothes piled on top of your dreams. Thank you. I've written a few political poems. I'm not going to read my, there's one that I've done to death, and it's quite funny because I think it was David was talking about when you go around and you start reading from your book and then you realize that you're reading the same poem. So I'm trying not to do that. This is a political poem though. It's my Brexit poem. Probably most people won't quite even understand it, never mind realise it's a Brexit poem. But anyway, I've told you now. This is my Brexit poem. And I think however you feel about Brexit, you've got to admit it's been incredibly clunky, to say the least. This poem is written in trochaic tetrameter because a trochaic line is da-da, 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 which sounds very unnatural in English. And so I tried to keep every line carnivalesque and ridiculous sounding. Miss Great Britain's Great Migration. All the world's a revolution. Miss Great Britain's no exception. Orchestrates her new beginning, spins the string bass, whirls the organ. Ball gown blurs the winter gardens, trips the summer night fantastic, esplanades the deck chair flotsam, promenades the catwalk pier, washboard skiffles, whips a frenzy, jettisons her whoops-a-daisies, dons a vest of weighted cockles, carry on, sploosh, rule Britannia. Thank you. I'm going to take a sip of my alcohol-free lager. It is alcohol-free. I've used this joke before to Steph, so I can't do it again, but it is alcohol-free because it was Steph who told me to never drink before reading, and she was right. So this poem is called Claustrophile. Back in the car years, hunting the world in packs, before everyone did their first Noah and paired off to the Ark, we drove round town, 2 up front, 3 or 4 backseat drivers, you stuffed in the boot or trunk for the Yanks who also say shotgun. The prime spot for every young punk apart from you who craved the safety of enclosed spaces, laughed in the face of statistics and found comfort in breaking the law so blatantly undercover. On our roads to nowhere, you lived for surprising humps, smashed your head, which invariably led to muffled concerns through padded partitions about dents in cars. You loved it, being locked away, simultaneously centre of attention, much like the murder victim of this Netflix drama, oxygen-starved in the back of her car in a Belfast forest, which brings me to think of you now, how you might be, what you do for middle-aged kicks, if you're driven these days to squat in your John Lewis wardrobe, close the door and gently rock. Thank you. And I'm going to finish with one final poem because it's actually quite long, I think. This is a poem about Grammarly, which I'm sure everybody knows because everybody must get advertised this poem, this ad all the time for Grammarly. But if you don't know by any means, Grammarly is a writing tool that corrects your writing and standardizes it, and is actually a very good tool, actually. But I was thinking, you know, what if in the future we had one of these that kind of controlled what we were saying, and, you know, so that's where this started. And it was written after reading, I think it's called Poem on the Underground by Michael Donaghy. And so it's kind of written in that style. Or I wish it was written in that style. Maybe I'm being a bit grand there. It's called Proposal for a Grammarly Plugin. Guys, as apprentice writer, I recall being chastised by my old school editor for checking out verbs on my smartphone. The man was a lover of tradition, of word books, of doing things properly, mistakenly assuming me to be Googling my grammar. Even he, however, could not fail to be impressed when I showed him the Collins Red Portal, which not only hosted more synonyms than his dusty 2-volumed Old Faithfuls, but also offered regular updates, contexts and sounds. He's 6 feet under now, of course. His dictionary's decomposing. His only remaining works ink-jetted pink on the purple backs of non-compostable chocolate wrappers. But I often consider what he would make of your excellent linguistic tool, which I use to appear clear, correct and uniform with every form of my written word, including now, as I write with news of my own application, under development, which harnesses your technology and encapsulates elements of face and auto-tune, beloved of influencers and pop stars respectively, though not exclusively, to provide speakers as well as writers with a thoroughly consistent voice, devoid of hesitation or clunky syntactic error in real time and for time immemorial, or until their subscription is cancelled, whichever is sooner. My proposed widget, currently in beta, is a thorax plugin nestling neatly and discreetly between the vocal cords by means of tracheotomy, utilizing, as per your current tool, a series of predefined rules to ensure plosives, fricatives, and other such phonemes hit specified vernacular goals. It niftily ranks utterances in real time, measuring sensitivity, verbosity, accuracy, and so on, amending and deleting as necessary. Admittedly requiring a large listening-in team initially, but ultimately carried out by machine. The prototype's ready, and I am currently working to enlist an assistant. So if you know someone willing, could you give me a shout by return? I have a surgeon who is desperate to operate. Thank you.